Hello, everyone. Welcome to Getting Started with Pantheon. My name is David. I'm very happy to be here today to share a little bit about Pantheon with you. In this workshop, we're going to be going through the basics of Pantheon. We're going to be seeing firsthand a demo of making a change to a website on Pantheon in the development environment. We're going to move that up to a live website. We're also going to be talking about website operations or web ops and some of the other pieces of functionality that comes with Pantheon. So as we go throughout the workshop today, I would strongly encourage you to share your thoughts, your feedback, your questions and concerns in the chat. We have a place on the little sidebar there where you can leave chat messages or comments or things like that. Please do make use of that because it makes the workshop even more useful for you. So let's jump in with some brief introductions. Hello again, my name is David Needham. I'm a developer advocate at Pantheon, and I spend the majority of my time at Pantheon working on various training workshops, leading the workshops frequently, like the one we're in here today, as well as just really all things training at Pantheon, both internal and external. I've been doing Drupal and WordPress work for over 10 years. I've been doing it since I was right out of college, and I really enjoy these open source communities. I worked at an agency for many years. I kind of went off and did my own agency thing for a few years. And along the way, I came to use Pantheon as a customer. And so a lot of the experiences that I have to share come from my experience as an agency, as someone who works at an agency building websites for customers. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions that people might have about that. But I've been doing this at Pantheon here now for about 5 years. So if you are not coming from an agency background or you don't understand what that term means, it's okay. Please just feel comfortable sharing your feedback and questions. Speaking of that, we are live streaming this workshop right now. So we have some folks joining us in Zoom. Hello, people in Zoom right now. We also are live streaming to LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So hello, people on the streaming platforms as well. The good news is that for all of you, you're able to interact with me in pretty much the same way, even though you're doing it from a different interface. If you click the link, or if you use the little comment window, chat window, things like that, I will be able to see your message and I can interact with you that way. Again, I would just reiterate that this is a live workshop. If you signed up for this workshop, you had an option to watch a pre-recorded version or to attend live. So I would just encourage you, make this workshop something most useful for you by asking questions at any point whenever you have them. Now, we do have a lot of workshops that we cover on Thursdays. This is the Getting Started with Pantheon, which we do every single week. We are also doing at the top of the hour, the command line interface with Terminus workshop. This is a little bit more technical, but we're going to be going into using your command line interface to interact directly with Pantheon, to kind of take a look at this tool named Terminus that we wrote, and then see how that works and see what things could be possible with a little bit of scripting. What sorts of automation can you introduce by using a tool like Terminus? We'll also be talking about Quicksilver next week in this sort of second live workshop slot. Automate and integrate with Quicksilver. Quicksilver just lets you tap into the existing Pantheon workflows and run scripts before or after any one of them. And what this means for you is that you're able to do things like let's say I'm deploying a change to the live version of our website. Maybe it's important that other people on my team are notified about a big change like that. So we set up a Quicksilver script to maybe do a Slack notification. Every time a deployment happens to live, set up Slack notifications to our team channel so that everyone gets notified. Or if you want to add in additional layers, you could say, every time I deploy to the test environment, let's go off to a third-party testing platform and run a series of automated tests to make sure that whatever change we're testing is going to continue to work correctly when we actually publish it on the live site. So any third-party API can be integrated with Pantheon using Quicksilver. So that is a really powerful tool that gives you all sorts of control that just isn't possible with anything else. On the third Thursday, we're going to be going through all sorts of performance topics. We'll talk about what Pantheon does to make your website fast, and then what you can do to make sure that your website continues to run fast and some debugging tips if you're having any sort of trouble, as well as what you can do to monitor performance over time on your website to make sure that things are continuing to run as quickly as you'd expect. And then finally, on the fourth Thursday of the month, we go through a really going live clinic. We have some brief slides where we talk about best practices for taking your website live, but we really want to prioritize making sure that you have a chance to ask questions and get help with any concerns you might have with taking your website live on Pantheon. So that is the fifth live workshop that we go through every month. So these are all the options that we have, as well as some private and sort of unlisted advanced options as well. But for more information, you can go to pantheon.io/live-workshops to sign up for those and attend live in Zoom. All right, so jumping right into the content. So Pantheon is a website operations platform. And at a high level, this WebOps thing streamlines how work gets done through agile tools and processes. Now, we also like to say that Pantheon, well, WebOps really, is a team sport. And these set of practices that we're all aligned on is focused on the success of the website. Every website is created because it has a purpose in mind. You don't just create a website for fun. Well, okay, some people, I've created a website for fun. Certainly if you're learning, you might create a website for fun, but most people that have dedicated employees to, to the website are doing so because there is a purpose for the website. They're trying to get something out of it. And what WebOps is trying to do is align everyone that is invested in the success of the website on one team. So they might be designers, they might be content editors, they might be your boss, the stakeholder, the person that's responsible, or your customer, the stakeholder, if that's the sort of company you're in. But of course, it would also include developers and other people that might be interacting with the code directly. But within this sort of WebOps culture, everyone whose job it is to change the website in some significant way, regardless of what that job is, thinks of themselves as being on the same cross-functional team, iterating towards the same goals. And the goals for your team will be different than the goal for other teams, and that's okay. That's a good thing. But the important thing is to measure and improve over time, to find that KPI, that key performance indicator on your website that is most important to you, the thing that moves the needle, and iterate towards improving, making that needle move as far as it will go. The only way that's really possible, though, is if you can focus on that last bit, on focusing on the measuring and improving. Well, from the very beginning, when Pantheon was first created by the founders, we started with these sort of agility and WebOps techniques in mind. We started with this serverless CMS approach. It's a serverless architecture, which really just means you don't have to think about or worry about the software that's running under the hood. It's a box, it's a container that lets you focus on the things that you want to focus on. So it allows us to scale smoothly from a simple development website that maybe just you and your colleagues are looking at and working on. So just a few visitors, all the way up to hundreds of millions of page views, all in software with no changes to your infrastructure whatsoever. So you're able to do this seamlessly just by clicking buttons in the Pantheon dashboard. On top of that, we built a set of automated site management tools that allow organizations to manage their upstreams, where the code is coming from, typically Drupal and WordPress, but sometimes other things, as well as the teams that manage all of the websites that are responsible for these websites, as well as permissions, how they get kind of trickled down and who gets access to what and all that stuff for dozens or hundreds or even thousands of websites at once. Whatever your scale is, Pantheon is able to handle that. And on top of the automation, we built a structured agile workflow that allows your team to focus on what is most important. A lot of those best practice, workflow sort of things are techniques that have to be learned with trial and error. And over time, you might go to a conference and you hear this great idea. Well, Pantheon's best practices are all baked in. When you come in, we'll be going through the workflow in just a few minutes. You can see that there is a structure in place for a very good reason. There are best practices that are being enforced that make the whole process easier and consistent for everyone, whether you're working on a small website that only a few people work on, or a huge website that everyone in the world has heard of before. And with all of that taken care of, you can focus now on measuring and improving. And again, this will be different for everyone. For some teams, it might be SEO. You might be doing some SEO optimization. You might be doing A/B testing to try 2 different versions of a website or messaging or something like that to see which one performs better. Whatever it might be for you, you might have an idea of what it is. And if you don't, that might be an area that you can focus on. But what I found coming from the agency background, before we came to Pantheon, I was responsible for our servers, not because I enjoyed working on servers. It was because someone had to do it. And I was the person who felt the most comfortable doing it. I had the most experience, but I preferred to interact with customers directly. I preferred to do, some front-end development work. I thought that was kind of fun, but I preferred to do training and interactions, kind of like I'm doing with you right now. And so I wasn't super happy managing my own servers. Every time someone was added to the project, every time that we started a new project, every time that we had security updates that were released for our sites, I had to drop the work that I enjoyed doing to do the work that I had to do, the mandatory work. Well, the thing that I saw firsthand was that when I came to Pantheon, I didn't have to do all of that mandatory work anymore. About 90% of it was already taken care of by Pantheon, and the last like 5 or 10% of them could be automated. So I didn't have to worry about managing people. I could just go in, add in their email address and click go, and they automatically get access to what they need to have access to. If they're removed from the project, I just remove them from the project, and it's easy peasy. There's nothing else to worry about. When a security update comes out, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but it meant that whole process could be automated. I didn't have to think about dropping my project that I'm excited about to go back and do it. So the same thing will apply to you. I feel pretty confident about that with Pantheon taking care of these bottom 3 layers, you can focus on the important thing to you, whether it's getting more time with the customer, whether it's actually, doing A/B testing and improving the performance of your website on, whatever scale that means. But let's keep going. So a website on Pantheon is going to be fast. We actually have this really wonderful blog post that I'm going to share in the chat for you. Basically, we took the HTTP archive data, which is just a bunch of data that has performance information for websites all over the internet. We took that data and we passed it through Google BigQuery. We analyzed the results to try to get great information. And one of the highlights, the thing that really stuck out to us, was that WordPress websites in higher education, so at a university, was about 4 times faster on Pantheon on average than about, a university that's really kind of hosting it themselves. So self-hosted, be it like internal or even like something like AWS, a website is about 4 times faster on Pantheon than a university doing that themselves. That's something that kind of opened our eyes, right? Like that's kind of an impressive metric. And the thing that I love about this metric too is that it is public. You can go and look at the HTTP archive. You can run your own Google BigQuery results, or you can do, kind of grab ours directly from the blog post and shout out at us if it's no longer accurate, because I definitely want to know. I legitimately want to update that as soon as it's no longer true. So if you notice anything that's different, anything that's been modified, anything that doesn't quite stack up right, or if we missed some significant metric in there, please do let us know, because I want to know. But it really means that it's pretty impressive. It's something that I'm very proud of. Websites on Pantheon are also a lot more agile. We're using containers. So again, if you're working on a small website or a large website, you're able to scale up. The containers just automatically create themselves and put themselves in place. It's all being managed in software. You don't have to worry about that yourself. There is also the agility that your team gains, which we'll talk about when we actually go through the demo. But let's move on. So Pantheon is also reliable. We strive for 99.95% uptime. And if you're not sure, you can go and check the status page, status.pantheon.io, where we publish those results. We do also have guaranteed SLA-backed uptime for our elite tier sites. Those stats are not published on the website, but we go for 99.999% uptime for those. So even more stringent on those particular websites. And then finally, we also are scalable. But I think rather than talk about the bullet here, let's move on to the case studies, because there's really 2 very different kinds of scalability that Pantheon handles really well. The first type is handled best by this case study with the ACLU. So the ACLU, during the previous presidential administration in the United States, was suddenly seeing a lot more traffic than they were used to. They were on Pantheon. They were able to kind of scale and kind of ride the wave, and everything was fine. But in one particular weekend where something happened, they received a spike of 8,500% more visits to their website than usual. 8,500% more visitors. So it was an enormous spike from they were used to, even with the higher rates that they had been seeing up to that point. But on that single weekend, they received 6 times their annual budget in donations. That's huge, right? Like, it's really hard to quantify. It's hard to like put a number to it. But if you think about it, like, whatever you make in a year, multiply that times 6, you get that in a single weekend. Like that is an enormous number. Such a great response. Fortunately, they were on Pantheon. We saw that they were getting more traffic. They were able to scale up to meet that demand. And as a result, it didn't go down. Their website didn't slow down or anything like that. And that resulted in a huge win for them. Well, that's one type of scalability, meeting the demand of however many extra visitors you have at any given point. Another type of scalability is represented by our case study with Apigee. This is Google Apigee. They are an API management company, and they get a lot of client websites. They have over 300 client sites and well over 1,000 different sandbox sites that they interact with on a regular basis. Well, they're able to manage all of this with a relatively small development team. And they can do this because they're using Pantheon's tools for automation. They're using Terminus, they're using Quicksilver. They have scripts in place that allow them to roll out changes to all of the websites at once. And again, they can do this with a team that is relatively small compared to the number of sites they're managing at any given point. That is only possible with automation, and Pantheon makes that really easy. So that is another type of success that is a very different type of scalability. It's not an increase in traffic, but we have this set fixed size of people that we have to work with, and we have a growing scale of sites that we have to manage over time. And it's not a big deal. Pantheon has you covered for that as well. All right, so let's move on to the development workflow. So when you bring a site to Pantheon, you get 3 environments. You get dev, you get test, and you get live. Now, live is maybe self-explanatory, but that's where you're actually interacting with your website to add content. It's where people are visiting your site and buying things or donating or leaving comments or doing all the stuff that people do on your website. Now, the dev environment is where you're actively doing development work. And that might be bug fixes. It might be improving new functionality. It might be doing security updates and things like that. All of that stuff on dev is done in code. And so all of the stuff on live, all that content that's updating and changing all the time is being saved in the database, as well as the files directory for things like images and PDFs that get uploaded as content's created. So we want to protect the database and files on live while also making changes to the code in dev. So when your code in dev is ready to go, you're ready to get that up to live, you start by deploying your code to test. And at the same time, we'll see in a minute, there's a checkbox to pull down the files in the database, essentially the content, anything that's changed on live, into the test environment. This effectively rebuilds the test environment every time that you make a deploy. So you're able to see exactly what's going to happen in test without actually having to risk putting it directly on the test environment. So there's no surprises. We actually had a marketing manager tell us one time that they didn't really understand the purpose of the test environment until one day they were working in dev, they were adding some Marketo integration to their website, and everything was going fine. So they deployed it to the test environment. But when they looked at it, it was just a white screen. There's some sort of a PHP error that was happening under the hood. And they acknowledged that if they had pushed that directly to live, they would have taken down their live website without even realizing it. Well, fortunately, every environment on Pantheon is totally isolated. They have their own stacks of containers. So the test website going down was no big deal. They went back to dev, they found the problem, they fixed it, they redeployed to test, pulling in a new copy from the live environment with all the new content that's changed, and they could verify that this worked. There's no problems, no concerns. So then they could confidently deploy that code up to the live environment. And the cycle is done. They could then, if they want to, pull the files in the database back down to dev, starting a new development cycle, or at least getting it ready for whatever's coming next. And this is the development workflow on Pantheon. Now, if we want to make this a little bit more real, let's play a scenario. Let's say that we are the Pantheon Theater Company. We have this website right here, And we are responsible for measuring and improving on the results of this website. Now, we are trying to sell tickets. And so naturally, we have determined that the buy tickets button that you see is the way that we sell more tickets. We want more people to click that button. Well, our marketing team has been doing some testing. They did some user testing and A/B testing and determined that the purple buy tickets button just isn't attracting enough eyeballs. We want that button color to be more contrast heavy. We want it to be a bright red color to make it stand off from the rest of the website. And when they do that, they've seen that the eyeballs of people are more naturally drawn to the button. More people will click the button. And as a result, we can move that needle and sell more tickets. So we have a Jira ticket open. We've been tasked with making that change to our website. So we've jumped over to our Pantheon website. We can see it's a Drupal website called Pantheon Weekly Demo. We can see that we're in performance medium right now. We're currently in the development environment and we're in SFTP mode, which just means I can make changes directly to the code in the dev environment. When you're in Git mode, you're able to do more Git advanced operations, kind of pull from other repositories or like push and pull from local and stuff like that. But SFTP is kind of perfect for this particular problem because I just want to make a change to the dev environment directly. I can do it with an SFTP app. I could do it from my command line interface, Terminus or Drush or WP CLI, or I could log into my Drupal or WordPress website and click buttons in the interface there to make changes. And all those are valid when you're in SFTP mode. Now, I'm just going to connect with my SFTP app. The credentials are all listed right here. I can use my password or provide my SSH key, and I can click this button to pre-fill that information into the app. So let's do that. I'm using CyberDuck, but you might be using something else. I get the prompt. I'm going to provide my SSH key instead of providing my password, and I'm going to log in. Now, I want to point out that if you are not a coder, if CSS is not your thing, this is okay. You can kind of close your eyes for a moment or just, watch, but don't be too concerned about the change I'm about to make because I'm just going to make a change to the theme. Not that theme, though. I'm going to jump in and make a change to our museum theme. I'm going to change the CSS file directly in my code editor, and I'm just going to change it from this purple color, the CTA purple, to red. Now, it is not important that you know CSS. It's not important that you see and understand exactly what I'm doing at this point. I'm simply making a change on the website, and I'm going to click right here, visit development site, to pop it open and verify, like, yep, I can see right here, I'm in the dev environment because it starts with dev dash. I can see we have a bright red buy tickets button. So I feel pretty good that my change worked. It looks exactly how the design spec told it to look. And if I jump back to my dashboard, I can see that there is one file change ready to commit in the dev environment. If I click on it, I'll see it's the file that I changed. And if I click again, I can actually see, oh yeah, I changed it from purple to red. So that's perfect. Next, I put in a commit message, changing CTA to red like that. And I'm going to commit that. So even though I'm using SFTP mode, I'm still backed by version control. Everything in Pantheon along the way, anytime that you interact with code, you are being protected and kind of managed with version control, with Git specifically. So even if you or someone on your team doesn't know Git, if they feel most comfortable using SFTP, it's totally fine. It's totally fine because they come in here, they still have to write a commit message in order to save their work, to kind of put it into the workflow. And so they save it, it shows up down below in the commit log alongside everything else that's changed. Whether people are using Git or they're using SFTP, it all ends up in the same place. And we're syncing our code over here. We can see our workflow is spinning, so something is happening. We're still interacting. But over in our test environment, we can see that we have this ready to go. So we're done in dev. We're ready to deploy to test. So we come over here. We put in our deploy log message. We are going to head, we're going to push the button to make it happen. And let me talk real quick about these options here. So we can run updates, which is good for Drupal. Not really relevant in this point, but that's fine. We can clear the cache, which is probably always a good idea when we're changing code. And then we have here pull files and the database from the live environment. This last one is the most important. When this last one is checked, it will copy the content, it'll grab everything off of live, pull it into the test environment, rebuild the test environment with that content, and then apply the code from dev. So this is the one that will actually make sure that anything that's changed on live since we last synced up this environment is going to be present here when we're testing our code, whether we're testing it with automated tests, visual regression tests to make sure that nothing broke visually on the page between this environment and the live environment, or some sort of behavior test, maybe like a B hat test or something to make sure that the functionality didn't break. because the last thing that we want is for the checkout process to be broken from some little change that we made to the color. Now, it's unlikely that would happen, but just in case, it doesn't hurt to include some sort of an automated test to be absolutely sure, especially for something as mission critical as that. So again, I can see up here the workflows are spinning. It's updating itself in the test environment. It does take a couple of minutes just because it is copying all that information from live. It is rebuilding the test environment on the fly with that information and then pulling in the code from the development environment. Now, we do also have some other things I can talk about real quick along the side here. We have a backup section. We're able to do automatic backups every day when you're on a paid plan. You can also manually create backups on demand for either 1 month or 6 months. And then if you need a little bit more customization on this, if you need more frequent backups or backups with a different sort of interval, you can absolutely do that with Terminus. Terminus from the command line, you can do all the things that I'm doing from clicking buttons and typing in boxes in the dashboard directly from your command line. If you're interested in that, we're going to be getting into Terminus a little bit in the very next workshop. So coming up right after this at the top of the hour. And we'll be able to talk through how Terminus works, also how to set up the scripts, thinking about your project as something that's scriptable so that if it's something that you don't enjoy doing or is something that's very error prone that you'd rather not have to worry about making a mistake on, then in that case, writing a script to automate that process is potentially a good idea. All right, it is still going through. That's okay. It happens sometimes. While I'm waiting for this to complete, let me jump back to the development environment. It does say here that there are 5 updates currently available. So in this case, for any Drupal core or WordPress core updates, Pantheon manages those for you, which means whenever they get rolled out, they show up here in the dashboard after we've checked to make sure that they're going to be compatible and don't pose any sort of issues on the platform. So whenever there's an update, you can see we have them posted right here. It is a little bit outdated. So that is something that we need to actually do some maintenance on for our own website, but we like to keep some staged in here for doing demonstrations and things like that. So right now there are updates available. I could apply them since I'm in SFTP mode. I'm sorry, I can't apply them until I'm out of SFTP mode. So if I switch over to Git mode, then I would be able to do it. But I'm not in that mode right now. So we also have the option for custom upstreams. So if you want to manage your own version of Drupal or WordPress or your own custom code repository yourself, you could create your own custom upstream and then have that be the basis for websites that you create across your organization. So maybe you are a university, you like to keep your branding on point, you like to keep your pre-configured themes and plugins or modules ready to go. You could start a custom upstream with all of that information in it, all ready to go. And then whenever someone spins up a new website, it comes with all of that rating for you, basically ready to be deployed, ready to get started with. So you don't have to start from scratch every single time or go out and grab all the pieces that you need every single time. All right, so this is unusual. It does not usually take this long. Let me do a quick refresh of the dashboard. Sometimes some things will get timed out. We're actually actively creating a brand new beta version of the dashboard that looks and functions a little bit better, has some new functionality baked in. It looks like it is still going. I suspect if I click this button to visit the test site, it is going to break, or not break, but oh no, it didn't. So sometimes if you try to visit the website in the middle of it being built, it will give you an error message that looks scary, but it's not scary at all because it's being rebuilt. That's expected. But we can see here it's working. We're in our test environment because it starts with test dash in the URL. And we have a red buy tickets button. So if we go back to our dashboard, click on over to live. Okay, well, it's still going. It's weird that it's still going up here, but I guess I can continue on with the demo. It's funny how these live demos go sometimes. So we have one commit ready to deploy from the test environment. We can go ahead and do that, get that process running. And this is going to now pull in all of the code changes that we have done in dev, that we've tested in test, and now pushing it into the live environment. Again, we can do this with confidence because we've already went through the automated tests. We've already asked for approval from design or marketing or whomever needs to give the thumbs up by showing them the test URL and making sure that it all worked okay. And then with time, this will show up directly on the live environment. So this is still rebuilding. It is, or not rebuilding, but it's still deploying to live. If I jump back over to my live site, pantheondemo.com, do a refresh, there we go. So it has deployed the code successfully. We have this change now on our live website. Now we will most definitely sell more tickets to the Pantheon Theater. So over time, we can validate this, make sure that it's still true, make sure that this is still something we want to keep doing. And we're going to keep iterating. We're going to keep making improvements to our website to try to keep moving that needle, because again, that's what is important to us. And we're able to do that thanks to being focused on this particular piece. So if we're looking at just Dev Test Live, we are a little bit handicapped, though, to be perfectly honest. Dev Test Live is wonderful. It was taught to me as the best practice for any web application before Pantheon was even created. Dev Test Live, those three environments, or they might have different names, but three dedicated environments for those purposes, was and is the best practice for any web application. However, the problem that you might experience is if you are only working and doing development work in dev, then you can get stuck. You can end up in a situation where I'm working on code and I break the website for someone else, and my colleague that's also working on the environment can't do their work because I broke it. That's a problem, of course. Potentially an even bigger concern, though, is I'm working on dev, and along the way, there's a security update that's being released. Well, I can't apply the security update if I have active and incomplete code being worked on dev. So I have to figure out what to do with my code. Should I, comment it out? Should I disable it? Should I roll back my commits and things like that? And none of those are really great solutions. They don't make anyone very happy. But also delaying applying the security update is a very bad idea too. You want to get that up to live as quickly as possible, just in case. Well, with multi-dev feature we have at Pantheon, you're able to have a dedicated environment for whatever purpose you want. So you can have environments for each developer, for each feature, or dedicated updates in one of these multi-dev environments as well. So this frees up the development environment. If all active development is happening in a multi-dev environment, it means that dev kind of becomes a staging point. Anything that gets deployed or pushed into dev is then able to go through the workflow, kind of launch up to the live version of the website as quickly as possible. You're not waiting for everything else to happen. This allows your team to work in a way that is much more agile. Because if I'm working on my piece of functionality, I don't have to wait for my colleague to be done with their piece and for the other person to be done with their piece. As soon as my little chunk is done, I can get that deployed up to live as quickly as I'm able to do that. If we jump back to the Pantheon dashboard, we can see the multi-dev tab right here. We can see that we have some multi-dev environments already in this great graph to show you how many commits behind and ahead each one of these environments is in comparison to dev. Now we can spin up a new one by clicking a button right here, name it whatever we want, clone it from whatever environment we want to clone it from. And we also have the option of interacting with Git branches, because under the hood, a multi-dev environment is just a Git branch with its own stack of containers. So it's essentially the development environment, the same stack that you'd get with that, but with a Git branch kind of organizing and managing all the code underneath. So if you are working locally, you're working in a Git branch, you push your branch up to Pantheon, it will show up here in the list, and you're able to click a button to create an environment dedicated to whatever it is that you're working on in that particular branch. And whenever you're ready, you can merge into master. Master in this case is the development environment. So we can merge into master. We'll just see exactly what commits are going to get pulled in, and we'll be able to see them, the button to merge it in. If there is a merge conflict along the way, it will warn you, it'll roll back. So you can't break the development environment by doing a merge conflict or anything like that. So you are protected along the way. So again, this is multi-dev. It's one of my favorite features at Pantheon. It makes all sorts of things possible. Probably one of my favorite things, though, is for my agency days when I'm working with customers, it's not uncommon for them to ask for a piece of functionality or ask for like some change to color, something like that. And they just want to see what it's going to look like. They want to know how it's going to work on their website without actually like fully committing to it being live yet. And Pantheon allowed our team to do that pretty easily just by spinning up a multi-dev environment. They want to see the menu in a different color. We do that quick little change in CSS, or we add this module, or we do whatever we need to do. And then we have a dedicated URL that we can share with them and get their approval on. And if they like it, it's easy to merge that into dev and then deploy it to live. If they don't like it, we can just delete the branch, delete the multi-dev, and it's not a big deal. It did not impact our workflow or our release cycle or whatever in any way whatsoever. So again, I really like multi-dev. So that brings us to the end of our workshop today. We do have a section here for Q&A, and so I would love for you to leave some questions for me. It makes this a lot more interesting for me, but it also hopefully helps address any questions or concerns that you either came to this workshop to get addressed, or maybe you had some new questions come up as you were watching. So please do share feedback, share questions in the comment window, the chat window, so that I can help you with that. I would really love to be able to help if I can. Also, I mentioned at the very beginning of this workshop that the majority of what I do at Pantheon revolves around training, and we are constantly making changes to this workshop and the other workshops that we do each week. To help us with that, I would love for you to share some feedback. There's a link here. I'm going to share it with you just to make it super easy for you. Anything that we could do to improve the workshop would be very appreciated. It is very helpful because, again, we're constantly making changes. We want to make this workshop as useful as possible for everyone who attends. Now, we also want to make sure that you enjoyed the workshop. So if there's anything that you didn't like, tell us that. If there's anything that you did like, please tell us that too. To be perfectly transparent, we are reevaluating this workshop. We're trying to decide if a different format will work a little bit better. So if you feel like there's a different format that this would work better in, if you feel like this is perfect for you, if this worked really well, if you feel like I spoke clearly and the examples I shared were really good, those are all good things to know. So please share feedback in either direction. It is all really helpful. Now, we do also have a list of resources. These are links. I shared many of these in the chat with you already, but there's some that I did not share, such as the platform considerations doc, which is really important for highlighting the sorts of scenarios that just don't work very well on Pantheon, as well as configuration. And then if you prefer a written version of this workshop, the quick start guide will take you through some of the things that I went through in the demo so that you can do it firsthand, step by step. There are many ways you can keep learning after today as well. I highly recommend joining the Pantheon community. We have a really strong Slack channel. I think last I heard about 4,000 people actively contributing on a regular basis. So it's a very friendly, very welcoming group of people. You can go there to Slack. We also have a forum if that's more your speed. Either way, I hope to see you there because I hang out in the community quite a bit. We also have support. If something's broken in Pantheon, you can always go to Pantheon support and get help with that particular problem. If you are looking for answers to questions or you're stuck with something you're working on, office hours is a great place for that. Every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central Time, we have office hours where it's just a normal Zoom room, and we invite people to share their questions. We do our best to help along the way, and then we'll go around the room for the whole hour and try to answer all your questions. And then finally, if you are wanting to get private training or other training topics that aren't covered in these live workshops, you can click the link here to get more training resources. All right, and with that, I think we're all done with the workshop. So thank you all for spending your time with me this afternoon. I hope that you enjoyed the workshop. I hope you learned something today. And either way, I definitely hope to see you around the community. So I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.